I don't condone anyone that shouldn't be getting loans. There's no point in helping somebody get a loan knowing that they can't afford it.
Yeah.
However, when there's errors and they should not be there, people should not be spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for help. And that is where we genuinely want to help these people succeed, move them forward in an ethical, correct way, where lenders aren't at risk and they are educated and they move forward and things have been corrected. But there's a way to do it. Everyone's happy. Hi, this is Chanel, and it's another episode of Knowledge is Power, and I've got the honour of welcoming my special guest, Julian from Loan Options AI. Extraordinary that you're here, and I'm very grateful that you're here. I know you're a very busy man, Julian, so I really cannot wait to kick this off.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate the chat, and you're the queen of so many different areas, and you help so many people. And I think how we first connected was an interesting story for another day. But just seeing how aligned we were at a values level was really important to me. I like dealing with people who are very aligned at a values level, but also just the way they look for things that are other than just money. How do I actually help people? How do I make an impact? And that impact part is really what we try and do for our customers. But I know for a fact, because I've seen you help tons of customers, make an impact to their financial well-being and get them back on track when things that are sort of maybe not their fault, or maybe they weren't even aware of, have cost them dearly in their life. So let's talk about all things like, credit files. Like what, how did you end up in this path? Like, give me that background.
Okay. So my background is actually legal and compliance. And back in England, I was in finance, as well as I used to work for the Lord Chancellor's Department, auditing really high profile cases. What I found is when I immigrated to Australia, there was a real lack of knowledge around financial products, what finance was, different aspects of finance, and the fact that Australia hadn't kicked off comprehensive reporting. England and America have been in comprehensive reporting for many, many, many years. And Australia has only recently, in the last few years, entered into this new world. I was with CBA for a number of years, a part of the merchant banking area. And I could not understand why consumers found that they weren't, getting the help they needed. So I actually ended up going into the consumer space and worked for a very, very reputable company. And part of that journey was, how do I help businesses and consumers in Australia in a more ethical and fair way? So with Wardle, we help a lot of businesses with respect to any IDR resolution they need. Understanding AFCA, the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, and what their role is in the country, what the Privacy Commissioner's role is in this country. And what I found is that not only were businesses struggling to understand rules and regulations, through obviously ScoreUp, who Wardle are partnered with. ScoreUp helps consumers really navigate their own credit reports. I personally have had my credit report impacted, and I am literally somebody that lives on an Excel spreadsheet. I never miss a payment. My credit is immaculate, and I even had errors on my own personal credit report due to banking error.
Yeah, sometimes you can get a duplicate inquiry.
Correct.
Just because, I remember, no offense to them, but Nissan Finance had one of the oldest, worst systems ever. And I remember when I was doing automotive finance for a customer, if there was ever a mistake on the settlement pack, you couldn't just amend the mistake and continue. You actually had to start a whole new deal, resubmit the file. And so it actually created, every time that happened, it actually created a new inquiry. And they wouldn't necessarily want to remove the old one. You had to have, you know, if the business manager in the finance department ruined the deal 3 times in a row, you'd have 3 inquiries. And it just never made sense to me, because obviously each of those inquiries are, you know, they can drop your score, as you're aware. And a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
And sometimes people access your file without your consent or knowledge. You know, maybe it's not necessarily consent part. Maybe it's just, you know, you were doing something very basic and you didn't know they want to access your credit file. You just tick the box, and then all of a sudden they've got your credit file. They put an inquiry, and you're like, "Hey, I didn't know I was doing that." Like, there's nothing that made it clear to me that this was going to be a credit inquiry on my file. And I do think you have a responsibility as a lender or as a financial institution is to tell people when you're going to be accessing
100%.
their file or inquiring on their file. Access seekers are great because, you know, it gives brokers and, you know, other parties the ability to view the file without impacting the score. Because, you know, the score part is obviously important. I'll get you to talk more about that if possible, because there is a direct correlation between loan eligibility and credit score. So maybe if you can share a bit more information for everyone listening on that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, you know, let's be clear. If you speak to a lender, you go through the application process, you've completed everything accordingly, you've been told that your credit report is going to be obtained to check, and, you know, you're also given the information that that's going to be listed on your credit report as an inquiry, and, you know, do you want to proceed? That's great. But not many people are aware that do you want to proceed means potentially your score is reduced. I think that's the element that a lot of lenders don't actually divulge. What I must say is that one of the reasons that Loan Options and myself and my team work so well together is this complete transparency. Your brokers are amazing. You know, there's no part of the puzzle that isn't explained to the client. They're not left feeling, okay, what next? What does the credit report mean? You know, the amount of education your brokers provide, just general, just, you know, knowledge is extraordinary. A lot of brokers don't actually do and go that extra mile. And, you know, on occasion, do people need help? Yes. And that's where, you know, we also re-educate the customer. We explain what inquiries mean. We explain the fact that the more inquiries, obviously, it shows that they're trying to get many loans in close succession. And Equifax are brilliant in flagging what that means on a credit report. You can clearly see the score decrease, especially if there's multiple loans obtained or attempted to be obtained in a short period of time.
Yeah, and the score drop isn't linear. It's not like one inquiry equals a loss of 30 points. Your point about the duration in which they're applying for multiple loans, that's really important because they actually compound. And also the type of loan. So for example, you know, a payday loan is going to reduce your score by a lot more in terms of number of points than, say, a secured property loan, you know, like a mortgage. And so in some cases, people's score can go up by applying for a mortgage. And it's really complex algorithms that show, you know, obviously these bureaus like Equifax and Ilion and Experian, it shows, you know, just how their models work. You know, it's not just how many inquiries, but it's how in what succession were they? Was it 3 inquiries in a week? Well, that's usually a sign of some kind of, I don't know if the correct word, but, you know, it's some kind of financial duress that they're under. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's like, oh, I really want that car. I really want that car. I really want that car. But it's also, it can be the other side where it's like, you know, I've got all these bills piled up and I'm feeling the pinch and I'm desperately need some money to solve this problem. And of course that can lead to some bad outcomes because then the client doesn't have much time to make a considered decision. So, very early in loan options, we developed something called a Loan Smart report. And what that is just an informative one pager. It was actually 2 pages to begin with, and we kind of simplified it a little bit. But, 1 or 2 page document. And it just basically says, like, here are your options. Here's information about your credit score. And here are the areas where you actually meet the criteria. And here for each lender, and here are the areas you don't meet the criteria for each of the lenders. And what that did was it showed them, this is why you haven't qualified for the cheapest lender, or, a lender that has no early termination fees, because you actually don't meet this key point that they're looking for, which might be your credit score is just outside their requirements, or maybe it's your employment duration or tenure or classification, the types of income that you're earning, maybe aren't in line with what that lender accepts. But it's all about financial education. Even now, when someone gets declined in our business, we put them on a pathway that's education and resources, and connecting them with partners like Score Up to say, hey, look, I know we weren't successful, but it's just we weren't successful right now. But here are all the steps that you can take to bring yourself back to financial health. And with partners like yourselves, I think it's really good, because the way you do it is not like other credit partners. I think there's this maybe this stigma that perhaps you're taking clients who are actually not creditworthy at all, and just like fixing it and making them seem creditworthy to lender partners. But I've never seen anyone work as closely with the lender partners to make sure that the reputation and trust is there. And that's what I really admire, because you're spending time with the brokers, making sure they know what types of clients you can assist, and you'll also help building the story. Or you're asking the right questions to help build the story, so the lender understands the client's perspective and understands that they were in whatever it is, they're in a tricky divorce, or they're in XYZ scenario, and here are the reasons why that was there. But also finding the inquiries that shouldn't be there.
100%.
I know there was some. I looked at my credit file, and I'm a broker. I can access my credit file every day if I want to. And it wasn't until I was refinancing a mortgage, and I was like, what on earth is that? And I researched the name of the company, and still till this day, I don't even know what that company was. And I'm like, I never consented to this. So clearly it's either a mistake, or it's someone accessing my credit file without my consent. And my score was still great. It was already, 800 or something, but it just meant it went up to like 9 something. And it's like, it's not a flex. I'm not flexing. I'm just, I'm just saying that, it was
900. That's a bit low, isn't it?
It's good for people to understand and obtain a copy. And a good way to obtain a copy is either by going direct to the bureau, but probably so you get a better explanation of what the credit file information means. Talk to a broker. Contact us from our team. We'll happily do it at our cost, and we'll give you the report, the access seeker report that won't impact your score. And our team will happily talk you through it, and I'm sure as would yours as well. So
absolutely, I think it's an interesting space, right? Because, as you know, I'm a qualified broker too, so I'm so glad I did that, because I know now what brokers go through, not only with lenders and making sure criteria is fulfilled, but also consumers that don't even understand what criteria is. And I must say again, Loan Options, every single one of your brokers are so thorough in making sure lenders are protected, as well as consumers are re-educated or educated, full stop. And that's where, our values align, because unlike credit repair firms, I don't want to be in a position where either of our companies are helping, certain individuals that really don't want to do the right thing, where, you do have people that really just don't want to pay out loans, and they can't afford loans, and they shouldn't be getting out loans. So, I don't condone anyone that shouldn't be getting loans. There's no point in helping somebody get a loan knowing that they can't afford it. However, when there's errors and they should not be there, people should not be spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for help. And that is where we genuinely want to help these people succeed, move them forward in an ethical, correct way, where lenders aren't at risk and they are educated and they move forward and things have been corrected. But there's a way to do it that everyone's happy.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
it's like anything. It's balance. It's building
Yeah.
trust. It's showing empathy towards the client, but also understanding that lender risk models are typically based around scoring. And if it's being manipulated, then that can have a detrimental effect to their models and throw out, their loss rates and all that, the sort of knock-on effect. And that's what I don't like, because a lot of lenders will ask if we deal with, credit repair agencies and stuff like that. And the reason they ask for that is they want to understand, are we someone who's like polishing a turd, so to speak? And that's just a terrible way to present it. But that's basically what they're trying to find out. And what I like with working with you guys is that's not what happens, and we're looking for people who genuinely shouldn't be in the position they're in. And not only do we just look at the credit score, but we also look at other areas like what's their banking conduct like? Does the banking, if the credit file has got some issues, but then the banking behaviors are really, really good, well, that's a sign that this is someone who's probably been hard done by. Yeah.
We both had credit issues because we've had errors on our credit report, which were legitimate errors. The only difference is we both know how to articulate the errors.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have that.
And it could be, the issue could be like in my case and in your case, it could be something really small, like an inquiry.
It was an inquiry.
An inquiry that shouldn't be there, right? Or it could be more sinister than that. It could be, a court judgment from a supplier who was just trying to make your life difficult and they owed you money but you owed them $1 and you were sort of going through a dispute and, it could be whatever, right? It could be something more high level than that, but I think people just need to understand and get educated around credit scores. I say it all the time, but there is a direct correlation between what lenders are prepared to give you and your credit score. And so if you don't know that and you're entering into an agreement or you're entering into a discussion with a broker, a lender, a financial institution, you're starting blind, and it's not a good place to start. You should start knowing all your facts and figures, and just like you would ask or expect to, for the broker or anyone else to tell you what it's going to cost you and all these kinds of things. If you have access to the information and you already know your credit score and you already know how many inquiries you've had in the last 5 years and specifically in the last 3 months, and whether your address history is up to date on your credit file, because that sort of stability does impact your score, how many employers you've had, like all of this stuff gets stamped on your credit file. So it's really important. And another thing that people don't know is, let's say you've got a bank and there's a credit card, right, attached to that bank, and maybe you didn't bother updating your address. What it's actually doing is every time, once a month, when they update the comprehensive credit reporting data, it's using and reporting the address that they have on file. So you might have moved 5 years ago, but now your credit file is actually going to have a lot of overlap. It's saying that you're still at your previous address up until last month. And that was something I noticed on my credit file because I have a card. It was a credit card that I used to pay for my honeymoon and get points and stuff. And like if you spent X amount in a certain period, you got unlocked points. So I did it. I literally don't use that card. It's there as like an emergency fund to rainy day. Like it's literally hasn't been used since my honeymoon 8 years ago. So, but they had my mum's address on there because I was still living at home before I got married and then moved out. So it was reporting my old address, and I'm saying, why is that there? And then I connected the dots. But someone who is experienced in reading the credit files can make that connection and go, looks like this card that you've got might be reporting an old address on your credit file, and that's actually preventing your score from going up higher than it could be. So there's so many little things like that, and that's why it's always someone has a question, like you got to talk to Chanel and the team because that's just, I mean, you just like obviously put them in a position where they just have that knowledge and that power to move forward, right? But yeah, what are some of the things that you see in like small businesses and credit and credit reports, and like what are some of the good things you see there, but also where it goes bad, and what are some of the things you see there?
What's interesting is with small businesses, especially in the last few months, I've come across many directors reaching out because they've discovered their personal credit reports are fine, but they might have a business that they're a director of, or many businesses that they're directors of, and all of a sudden there's like a blemish, an invoice wasn't paid that they've obviously signed a contract with the supplier. I'm seeing a lot of ATO defaults popping up on commercial credit reports, and a lot of directors are reaching out to me directly saying, look, I wasn't contacted, but there's something on my credit report. I'm seeing that a lot in the last 3 to 6 months, and my advice to especially small business directors is you might have a brilliant accounts team, or you might have your accountant's email address down as the main email address, or a customer service email address. Any contract you sign, ensure that you've got your own contact details in there. So if there's ever a missed payment, you're also notified. A lot of people just miss the simple things. As consumers, we normally have to give our email address, our phone number, a next of kin to be contacted if we're not, if something happens or whatever. A lot of small business owners don't realise that they can still provide those details to these companies. So they're put in the loop just in case there's a late invoice of 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. And the rules are very different for commercial contracts. So what I mean by that is, with consumers, there's certain legislation that needs to be adhered to in this country, and you're covered with certain notices, certain contacts, whereas with small businesses, if it's a commercial contract, it's different notices, and before you know it, you've been default listed, and you don't know why. So if you ever need to reach out and figure out whether or not you've signed up for a contract on the business and you're liable, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. But with small businesses and credit reporting, there's a lot that directors don't know, and that baffles me, because you'd think that if lenders are giving higher value loans to businesses, they also educate while they do that, or provide some sort of assistance as to what the contract means. There's so many pages, a lot of words, and little context.
Yeah. I mean, that's there's a process that needs to be followed to list a judgment, but I mean, if there's a dispute, like I don't think, even myself, like I don't think I could tell you that off the top of my head, what the steps are to sort of get to that process where it's either resolved, or like if someone owes us a substantial amount of money. I don't think businesses really get taught that, and they probably, the most optimistic view possible is they don't ever think it's going to get to that. It's like, it's my mate, he'll pay me or whatever, and then before you know it, they stop using you or whatever, and you're like, how am I going to get this significant sum of money, whether it's $5,000 or 80,000, like whatever it is. So yeah, it is a point that I think not a lot of small business owners know, or even think about, or even forecast or plan for. But it can happen. The business can go through tough times and not have the ability to pay you. Sometimes they prioritize paying themselves, like depending on how small the business you're working with. That business owner's first and foremost is going to be to try and draw a wage out of their business to pay themselves and pay their own mortgage. They're not really thinking about how they're going to pay you if they can't do that. So,
and that's the thing. What I find I do a lot with especially small businesses and directors is I carry on bringing home the fact you shouldn't ignore collections, whether or not you're receiving letters from a collections company or from the collections area of a company, or whether or not you've got your internal collections where you're owed money and you need to collect. Don't ignore the collections piece, because either you're going to get defaulted, or you should actually be arranging for action against another company. Because if they're doing that to you, they're doing it to others. Okay, so never ignore that, and that really ties in also with consumers. If you receive letters where you owe money, don't ignore it. Get on the phone, and if you are owed money by people and that's why you're late, so say if you haven't been paid yet and whatever, speak to your lender. Just say, look, I haven't been paid yet. My boss owes me money, or my contract owes me money.
Yeah,
or,
communication.
Communication is key, and a lot of people are so afraid, Julian.
Yeah.
And I think that's.
I know why as well, because like it's kind of like a lot of people don't like talking about money. It's the same reason why employees are a little bit scared to ask for a pay rise, right? It's like it's a little bit icky, and they're worried it might tarnish the relationship, or they're worried it by raising the question, it might mean that person goes somewhere else, which is kind of silly, right? Like if you're the person that you're dealing with is petty enough to go somewhere else because you asked for something simple like getting paid for the work you do, then maybe they're not the right supplier anyway. A lot of people do it by creating a bit of a buffer. So I know even if you're one person in the business, all you need to do is create another email address or even an email alias and just create a name out of thin air and call it, Jacinta, and let Jacinta do the accounts. It could just be you sitting behind that email, but the illusion that it's someone else from the office just following a process, following standard company practice to follow up accounts overdue past 30 days or whatever the terms are, right? So a lot of businesses do stuff like that. And if you try and call and talk to Jacinta, you won't get through to Jacinta. But also just having a bit of separation. If you do have more than one person in the business and it's a bit bigger business, and you've got someone who looks after accounts, then let them do it. And then it's less, it puts less strain on the personal relationship. And also don't necessarily go to the owner or the sort of the figurehead of that business if they have an accounts team. Just go to the accounts team, because chances are that business owner is good at many things, like actually, selling whatever it is their product or service is. But oftentimes that person who's really good at those things is not good at the books. It's very common. If I had to pick, I would say that accounting's definitely not my strong suit. My wife's an accountant. My uncle's an accountant. I didn't get any of the accounting skills. I've learned a lot by running a business and listening to smarter people than I. But it's not like something I really love doing. So, we have Christine in our office and Angela DeGaris, like as our CFO. She does a great job, and I don't need to worry about that. I look at the numbers that I need to look at. I look at the areas that I know are important because I've learned they're, super important, and and just manage with what we've got. So it's those are a couple of small tips, I think. But what are you seeing? Because we're seeing a lot of sort of in that debt consolidation space at the moment. And debt consolidation has always been, to me, one of the very few opportunities where you can clearly demonstrate win-win. So if someone comes to you and they want a new car, right, you can deliver that outcome and you can get them the new car that they want. But they never truly see the value that you've provided because, unless they literally compared 75 different banks and lenders themselves one by one, they don't really know how much money you saved them. Whereas in debt consolidation, they're coming to you with multiple loans at different interest rates and different debt levels and all kinds of stuff. And their monthly repayment is usually very high. And one of the reasons for that is they've paid down their debts over time, but the loan term is still scheduled to end at a certain date or maybe at different dates. And so by consolidating, you can free up a lot of cash flow in a household and not have to pay all the separate fees. Like if you've got 5 loans. And so I know why they, why they want to consolidate. And we know that we add great value there. But what are you seeing on the other side with debt consolidations? Like, what does it do to credit? What does it do to their financial stress? What does it do to their financial well-being?
Well, look, I can only speak to how I've seen loan options do it, and the individuals that I've seen that you'll have done debt consolidations for, loans for, so much happier, eliminated a lot of the stress, a large portion of consumers don't realise they've got all these multiple loans. For example, they might have 2 payday lender loans, then they've got a CBA loan, and they've got all these different loans. And when you calculate the interest across all of them, extortionate amounts of money being paid. You know, what I found
Not to mention all the fees as well.
All
like
the fees,
$10
and
a month
charges,
account keeping.
yeah. And what I found is that when they actually do a proper debt consolidation, it's generally, what I've seen is 9 times out of 10, it's with a lender that comprehensively reports as well. So they've taken all of these loans, consolidated into one, getting comprehensive reporting, because the payments are lower, which means they're meeting the repayments every month. Their scores are increasing. So the ones that I've seen you all do beautifully have really had such positive impact. There's a client from last year, Loan Options not only provided a debt consolidation loan, because you're re-educated customer on their credit report and don't apply to multiple lenders now and all of that sort of stuff. I got a phone call from this consumer saying, look, I'm ready to actually buy a house now because I'm managing the loan, managed to save money on the side, and, you know, how much deposit do I need for this house? So it was a good outcome, you know, and that's the difference, Julian. One of the reasons you and I connected is your values are next to none. You really stand by core ethical, moral values. Your entire team support you because of that. And that sort of value system that you have, your team have, therefore the clients they deal with are treated with so much care.
It's important. It's so important. And I said from the very beginning when I started the business that anyone I bring into the business needs to be aligned with those values. And look, I haven't always got it right because sometimes people are very good at pretending, you know, but I get it right more often than I get it wrong, which is, I think, what you need to aim towards. You can't be perfect, but it's so important to have those clearly defined in your business. And if you don't, you should take the time out of your day or week to just chip away at it. You know, it is a big job to really think about, like, what do we stand for? Who are we as people? Who do we want to be? Because it might not be who you are right now, but who do you actually want to be? What's the future state where you would be proud, or your kids will be proud of you, your parents will be proud of you? And that's how I always think about values. You know, like, if I'm not in the room and people are talking about me, what is it that I'm known for? And if I'm known for being someone who is true to their word, if I'm known for someone who's honest, if I'm known as someone who was not using leverage to my advantage and taking advantage of people and things like that, then that's what I want to be. You know, that's how I want to be spoken about. And it comes at a cost, but to me, the benefit in the long run is far outweighs the cost. So it's a net positive, and it does take time for people to notice that. And, you know, you could sort of take shortcuts along the way, but in the long run, absolutely being, you know, steadfast in your morals and your values. And it helps you sleep at night. It helps you get the buy-in of the team because they can sleep well at night, knowing that they're actually taking care of customers. You know, we could increase our margins for sure in our business. Absolutely, we could increase our margins. But from my perspective, you know, if we make enough and that client is so sticky, like, our number one source of business now, and we're only just over 3.5 years old, is repeat business. That tells you we're doing something right, you know, because the average cycle for someone to buy a car is greater than 3 years. So we're already seeing this hockey stick of repeat business coming back. And I'm very excited because it's really much needed validation for being so strong in these values. And I think when people start to see it pay off like that in the business, they'll double down on it as well. You know, so they already know that this is how we operate. There's no negotiation. There's no like, oh, we do it 90% of the time. So this is how we always make decisions in the business. This is how we always treat people. And, you know, we have 7 values in the company, so it's fairly simple. But, you know, often people ask, oh, what's the most important one? And the one that kind of encompasses all of them. So if you only get to choose one, it's be a good human. And that covers so many different things. But being a good human is being open, being honest, being transparent with your customers, not making promises you can't keep. But also it's things like being the best version of yourself as well. So that's like the professional and personal development stuff. That's covered in our test and learn value. But be a good human is all of those things. Like be the best version of yourself. Don't gossip. Don't talk about what's going on. Don't judge people. You don't know what they're going through. And if the shoe's on the other foot, you'd probably beg not to be judged. So and the leverage part is like you've got somebody coming in and they want a loan, and what's the loan for? Maybe it's something really positive and fun and exciting, like a new car or a jet ski or something. But also maybe it's a single mum trying to bury her husband and pay for funeral costs. And you need to understand that, and you need to be empathetic in your approach to dealing with that. And anything outside of that is just not acceptable. So we set a standard, and if you're not adhering to those standards, you're not welcome to be in the business. And I would say that everybody does buy into it. Every now and again, you get someone who maybe has some flexibility, but we quickly weed those people out, and they feel like they don't belong very quickly. So that's what I was saying, where we don't always get it right. Unfortunately, you can't, because also sometimes people change too. So, but those values I think are so important for any business, and it's certainly helped us be successful. But I also know in your business, you're pretty strong on that too. And there's never been a situation where we've had any dealings that have been anything other than just honest, open, transparent.
Yeah.
If we have a situation, whether it's to do with a client or to do with anything really, we have a chat, we talk about, what problems we're facing in our businesses. It's just such a pleasant experience. And people want to deal with people. And if you're in a services business, it's very different to if you're in a product business.
100%. Because I'm a pretty full-on character. So what I found is you either love me or hate me.
It's pretty hard to hate you. I mean, it's pretty hard to hate you. Look, there's always going to be people that are detractors. I'm sure there's a long list of people that hate me. Why? I'd love to hear why. That is, because I do want the feedback, and maybe I have done some things, to people that I didn't know I was or wasn't aware of or whatever. But I like to think that I haven't burned any bridges in my career. I like to think that I've always operated where things have gotten a bit out of hand. I've always put my best foot forward to make sure that I extended an olive branch and wore some of the pain to make sure that they weren't too left out in the woods, so to speak.
It's interesting that you said wore some of the pain, because I think human nature is that when things get too difficult, you either fight or flight,
yeah.
Right? Sink or swim. There's so many paraphrases to sort of highlight what people do in sticky situations. What I found with you, and hence why all your brokers have such great values, is the honest, transparent, clear communication that's also got that positive outcome to it. Yeah. So it might not be an ideal outcome, but there's always like a rainbow at the end of that tunnel. What would you say to other companies or individuals? They're going through a struggle street at the moment, or a difficult time, either trying to get a loan, dealing with difficult employees or employers, a collections company, like scenario of the world. What advice would you give to a director or an individual where they're having to deal with BS, with difficult, not very good people?
Yep.
And still maintain their values? What would you tell them? Because we both faced BS in business.
Yep.
So what would you say that would encompass?
Focus on the things that you can control, that are in your direct control. You can't control how they're going to behave or what their values are. So don't try and do that. You shouldn't be naive and too trusting. If something feels funny, go with your gut and don't stick around for, as soon as you can get out of that relationship or partnership or whatever it might be. But equally, I think if you boil it down and someone is trying to take advantage or whatever it might be, then that comes back to, before you get into these partnerships, you need to make sure that really what you have is really robust documented processes about milestones. So if this is mistakes I made early in my career, right? If someone says they're going to do something and you're giving them something in return, right? Those things should be documented, and there should be, whether you're giving up equity or cash or whatever it is, they only get the benefit, whether it's equity or cash, when the milestone's been hit. So it's not like, oh, you're going to give me this and I'm going to give you that. No, it's like, when you do this, this is what I'm going to give you. And maybe it's a total of a share of equity in the business. Break up the equity over milestones. So don't give it to them all at once. The equity should be delivered when each of the milestones are hit. And that's it. So protect yourself legally. Get good advice from people who know what they're doing, who have seen this, from experts. But just on the things that you can do, put one foot in front of the other. Don't get trapped in your head and try and control all the external factors. Don't do that. You need to remain composed. You need to try and make sure that these people do not bring the worst parts of you out. And so remain composed. Think about all the things that you can control and just focus on them, So if you want to, what can I control? Like for example, in my business, I can control how many conversations I'm having with new partners every day. I can control the interactions that I'm having with my team. I can control how many phone calls I'm making. I can control how many phone calls I'm receiving, how many emails I'm making, outbound, all this kind of stuff. So focus on all those things. Don't forget about all the noise, I can focus on spending time creating content. I can focus on all those things. They help, but they also help take your mind off all the scenarios that you run in your head, like, oh, this person's out to get me, that person's out to get me. Let them do that. If it means that you lose in a big way your business or revenue or whatever it might be, the way that I see it is, you'll either be blessed, whether you're religious or not, doesn't matter. You'll be blessed with the good prevailing. So you'll be blessed with a triumph, or you'll be blessed with the lessons that will go on to make you triumphant at a later point in time. So to summarize that, the advice I would give is focus on what's in your control. Do not deviate from your values. Do not bring yourself to the level of other people. And you'll be, there's a UFC fighter who said this, and he said, God will bless you in front of the same wicked people who tried to curse you. And I truly believe that. It's karma, whether you believe it or not. Karma is, it's just so powerful. You operate in business on this reciprocity principle. You believe, you give everyone the best version of you because you believe at some point the value that you've added, the help that you've provided, will come back. And even if it doesn't come back, you don't mind, because that's what being a good person is. But also, it's just the way karma works. You open a door for someone, like it has a ripple effect, and that person opens a door for someone else. And before you know it, someone's opening a door from you, and you were the one that created that ripple in the first place. So be generous with your time, write notes about the mistakes and be honest with yourself about the mistakes you made so that you don't make them again. That's what I would probably ask.
Thanks, Julian. That sort of hit a nerve with me, because that's one of the reasons that Wardle, as well as Score Up, we do so much pro bono work. So there's so many businesses I help off the record because I want them to get the assistance they need. And some businesses don't have thousands of dollars to spend on lawyers, and the information is there, it's ready, available. You've got the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, it's completely free. You've got the Privacy Commissioner, completely free to reach out to them. You've got the New South Wales Ombudsman for businesses, Small Business Ombudsman. You've got so many independent government institutions that companies, individuals can reach out to for free, and nobody knows where to start. So yeah, I really strongly believe that if you're a good person in the world and do things without expecting something in return, you will be in a better position in the future. Only because blessings will come your way.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
And if they don't, it doesn't matter. You've still stayed true.
Yeah.
You've still stayed true to who you are as a person.
You can go to bed at night and be the value piece that you want your children to see.
Yeah, yeah.
So
you're setting a great example.
Yeah.
And the example you set, not just for your children, but for the people in your team and for those around you and people in the industry, it inspires everybody to do better. Yeah. And that's really what you want to try and do, is like create, if your legacy is going to be something, it may as well be something really positive, you know, and it may as well, or it sure as hell shouldn't be something that's negative, or be known as the person who you know, whether it's the guy with a dual or split personality, or the guy who never keeps his word, or you don't want that sort of thing. But yeah, look, got a bit deep there, but you know, I think your point is like people in business and, you know, even with employers, like they make mistakes, they trust, you know, the amount of times in my career where I was promised things by employers that didn't, that's, you know, part of that's what's made me who I am today. It's like, you either get blessed with the triumph. So at the time I was like, oh, well, I was promised this much money, or I was promised this role, and then it's like, it didn't happen. Well, it just gave me the knowledge, the power, and the lessons to, you know, figure out the person that I wanted to be, and make sure that I never do that to other people as well. So there's so many lessons that you can learn. Instead of getting down in the dumps about it, you just go, okay, it's either going to work out well for me, or I'm going to be trapped in this. But the good news is I'll have the lessons so that I don't make the same mistakes again. And you just have to be grateful for that, because as long as you're still alive and you have yourself and your family's health, what does it matter if the business things don't go your way? What does it matter if, you know, like at the end of the day, the sun will rise tomorrow, and you know, you can move forward and know that at some point these problems eventually do resolve themselves.
100%.
So there's a certain amount of time that requires this too, what's the saying? This too shall pass. Like, yeah, it's like anything else. You know, there was problems in your life at some point that you thought they were never going to go away, and you couldn't see a pathway forward, and you couldn't see how they were going to resolve. And now you don't even think about them because they're just that long resolved. So, what about sort of the more strategy side of credit repair, like the long-term positioning of a particular client or customer, like giving them the guidance? Like what are you seeing there? What services do you offer? Like, you know, let's talk about like the Score Up app and how that's positioned to try and give the client this constant updates and transparency on it, because we've hardly spoken about that.
No, we haven't.
So, how much can we say? Because it's like...
So, Wardle Consultancy is all about knowledge is power. And one of the reasons that we set up Score Up was because I cannot stand firms representing or pretending to represent consumers where consumers are paying potentially a mini loan for assistance. I don't think it's fair, and I think if anything, we should be empowering people, empowering companies, empowering directors in order to gain the knowledge they need to fix their own issues in their life, you know? So what I found with finance is a lot of people are very secretive about their personal finances. It's a bit like this, you know, people want to protect their marriages. People want to not talk about their sex life. People don't want to talk about taboo subjects. And finance is the same. Nobody over coffee will just openly say, I don't know how to pay my bills, or I'm missing my mortgage repayments because I've got a gambling addiction. I'm, you know, going through a divorce at the moment, so I'm not paying the personal loan because I'm paying a lawyer. Nobody has these open conversations. So the reason that I set up Score Up was because I wanted people to have a voice without spending thousands of dollars for assistance. I do a lot of pro bono work, but more importantly, we're developing an app. And with the Score Up app, you could literally dispute your entire life, and it's as simple as using Uber Eats. So, I'm giving people the knowledge and empowering them with legislation and how to get their life in order. And if they need financial advisors, we've partnered up with financial advisors. If they really want that long-term growth strategy for their business or individually, we have experts in the field under this umbrella. So people are truly going to be given not only the knowledge they need, they'll have a partner for life. And I'm just so grateful that with your support over the last few years, you've given us even deeper insights into that lending space, because, your brokers are already empowering consumers. And the fact that Score Up app is hoping to be going live shortly, it's just going to literally give people what they need to have that long-term strategic goal. So the short term would be, I've just discovered my score's low. Okay, we'll work through you through an app, and you're not paying thousands to be able to get your score up a legal, legitimate way. But then at the back of that, you can see your score increase and what to next. What do I do next? What's my next goal? What's my next strategy? And I speak to directors all the time, and they haven't even got structures set up. That's how crazy it is. Directors have set up businesses, but they don't know what to do with money. Yeah. They don't know how to, what a BAS is. They don't know what PAYG tax is. They don't know what the IAS statement they've just received from their accountant is. So, Score Up is going to open the world in very different areas, and helping consumers is that starting step.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So, I don't know if you have any other questions for me, but I've certainly loved this chat, and we always, catching up anyway. But I'm just so grateful to be partnered with you and your team, and I'm excited for this app. It sounds like it's going to be amazing, and I know you've worked really hard on it to get it to this point. So,
thanks so much, Julian, for joining me, and I'm forever grateful, as you know. And you are just an amazing human being. Your staff are amazing, and Loan Options is just truly where people need to go if they want a suitable, compliant, the best brokers. So, especially when it comes to anything from assets to the new car loan to, just consolidating debt to everything, like, you are amazing. I've just got one more question for you. What is your long-term strategy? Your AI, I love all the graphics. I just love, how funny your team are. Yeah. As well as the fact that you'll know your share. So what to next?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so the goal has always been, since we started the business, is to make the finance process as easy as checking out in e-commerce. But there's a lot of things that come with that, right? Like, we have a responsibility to make sure it's the most transparent process. And so right now, we're the only broker that provides real-time pricing to customers as they're filling out their information. A lot of them have, even our competitors have started adding more and more sort of rate calculations and things like that. But they always happen at the end, and they want all of the information from the customer before they do that. Our process is like, as they're typing in their information, they're actually seeing the results, and they're seeing how each field they enter actually changes the results. So it's very unique, it's very transparent, it's very dynamic. But we're moving towards this autocomplete style application process. Traditional application process was handwritten, and then the evolution of that was, now it's a fillable PDF form, and then now it's an online form. And now we're going to the next generation, which is an autocomplete form. So there's already so much. We spoke about the credit history and the credit report and how much information is on there. So we're asking clients now, instead of filling out long forms, our autocomplete engine has reduced their data entry by about 80%. So upload your license. We built in-house OCR technology that pre-fills all the data from the driver's license. And the job of the client then is to just check and make sure it's accurate. You know, maybe they've moved address or whatever it might be. Of course, they have to consent to this process. I should start with that. So consent, number one. 2 is upload the license. 3 is if they want to, they can connect their bank statements. And that's the thing about our autocomplete engine is it is optional. So if people are not comfortable, we've built that function in where they can just skip and type things in manually. But if they do connect their bank statements in a safe and secure way using the Ilion's platform, all of their income and expenses will be pre-filled, which means that someone on the other end doesn't need to sit there and comb through, you know, what they had for coffee, who they're meeting up with, who's, you know, we don't want to do that, but we obviously do need to understand what are your general living expenses? Can you afford this loan? So it's doing that process in real time. And then of course, last but not least is it does a soft check on the credit file, and it's pulling all of the liability data from the comprehensive report. It's also pulling their address and employment histories and things like how many inquiries, and it's feeding that data into our autocomplete engine, and it's matching with the right lender. And the AI component, a lot of people ask like, well, which part is AI? Because like, couldn't you just build the lender rules? But and obviously we do, but the AI part specifically is the probability of match with each lender. And that's looking at things like the probability of approval, the speed, the what's important to them. So we're actually asking, you know, what are your priorities? What's important to you? And we're the first company that's actually done that. Everyone else is just like, give me your information, I'll show you the best rate. And that's kind of the extent of it, the journey. We're actually creating an experience where the client can tell us in order of priority what's important to them. So in short, we're going to provide the ability for someone to apply. Right now it's up to 5 minutes. We've got it down to 5 minutes, I should say, you know, with version 3. But ideally we would want to get that down to like 60 seconds or less to do the entire onboarding process, and then match them with the right lender from over 75 banks, over 75 of Australia's best banks and institutions. Let them select based on what's important to them and give them an instant approval. You know, that's the journey. So that's where we're headed. Right now, our fastest time to money in the client's account is 36 minutes. So first inquiry, whilst the client, who was a nurse, was on her lunch break, 36 minutes later, the money was in her account. So you just think about, you know, that is so ridiculous. To be able to broker a loan it takes most brokers 36 minutes to review a set of pay slips. You know, we've done the whole process using our technology and obviously the greatest brokers of all time, you know, in our team, to speed up that process and give them great tools and technology to efficiently serve their clients. So
because I've seen it firsthand. You've got a lot of technology-based, I guess, broking companies that claim to do what you all do, but they simply don't. And your technology is next to none. And
some of them have like lots of tech, but not very many good people, or not very many people at all. And some of them have like the illusion of great tech, but then it's just a lot of people, you know, in the back end. And I feel like we've got the balance right, because at any point in time, someone can click the button and say, I don't know what to do here. And it says, talk to a human. And they're going to call and they're going to talk to someone from our team who's going to concierge them all the way through and give them fantastic service. So yes, we've got great tech, but I want to emphasize the great tech is only great tech because we have really great people. 1, building the tech, 2, providing feedback on the tech, and 3, supporting the tech by talking to the clients and improving it over time. So
thanks, Julian,
for
filling me in, and I cannot wait to see the next stage of your journey. And here's to many, many good value, you know, great service, and just cannot wait for us to actually take consumers and companies on the journey with us.
Thank you, Chanel. Thank you so much.